Well, it is said we can be certain of nothing except death and taxes, but a growing number of Britons say they are certain there is no God. How do they know? That's the point. And as atheism has increased, so have the intellectual attacks on those who have religious faith. Our last big question, is atheism an intolerant belief? Professor John Adams, where are you, Professor?
I'm here.
I've lost you. There you are. In the midst
Disappeared into the ether.
Disappeared into the ether. Well, there you are. There is a God. You're still very much here. We can touch you, we can see you, we know that you exist. The problem that people of faith have with what they see as an increasingly strident atheism is that atheists tend to treat them as soft-headed and irrational and, you know, oh, you might as well believe in the tooth fairy. And it's a rather patronising attitude atheists have.
Well, I don't agree with that, of course. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody and accused them of being soft-headed. A lifetime of teaching undergraduates, that's I've been sorely tempted. What atheists do is ask religious people to examine the evidence for their beliefs, and that's the ball is now in their court to consider what evidence they might look to for a belief in supernatural beings or whatever it might be.
Do you think, Paul Woolley from the Christian think tank Theos, isn't it? Do you think there is a new kind of strident atheism abroad?
Definitely. I think if you read books like Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion, the fact that he describes people like me that have faith in God as having a virus, or the fact that he would say that religious belief can be evil, there are certainly people within our society who are atheists who are incredibly intolerant. And of course, historically, you only need to point to people like Stalin and Mao Zedong and Pol Pot. Underpinning their ideologies, their approach to their politics was a profoundly intolerant atheism. So yes, it exists. And of course, the reality is, interestingly as well, that atheism in global terms is actually increasingly a diminishing phenomenon. If you look at the statistics for 2050, recent research, it's in the book God is Back by John Micklethwaite, you'll see that the stats indicate that 80% of people in the world in 2050 will have some sort of religious belief. I would say that part
there won't be members of the religious think tank Theos, that's the problem.
Some of them, I hope will be.
Okay, yeah, go on, Chloe, isn't it?
Hi there, yes. Well, there's already lots of points to address, but straight away you brought up the thing about dictators with a lack of faith. Now, are you telling me that Stalin did all of the terrible things he did because he didn't believe in God? Now, that's got nothing to do with why he was a bad person. He didn't do all these things because he was an atheist. He did them because he was evil.
I think the point there is that atheists, perhaps people like yourself, they can't have it both ways. So often the argument put to me...
What does that mean?
Well, the argument often put to me is that religion is the cause of great evil in the world, and therefore people point to people that have religious faith
but
and
atheists,
say
hang on,
they did evil.
Atheists don't generally burn books or embark on jihads.
Yeah, I think they did.
Do they?
I think Mao Zedong, who was a very extreme atheist...
People without religious faith do these things the same way people with faith do. But while you will find people burning books, shooting abortion doctors, going on, yes, very genocides, because their faith tells them to, or their interpretation, rather, of their beliefs tells them to. People, atheists, don't say, I'm going to kill a load of people because they don't share the same lack of faith as me.
I just think you don't read history properly. If you look at the historical record, the reality is that people like Mao Zedong, they had a profound atheism, a worldview, a faith position, and that's the other point. People that are atheists, they have faith. They believe that God doesn't exist. I believe God does exist. It underpins their view of themselves and the world and the humanity. And of course, Mao Zedong, he replaced, in the Soviet Union, USSR, it replaced God with the state. Yes. So it was profoundly religious.
But it used a lot of religious sort of philosophy to underpin the regime, didn't it? Taoism. Well, that's another issue. Reverend Rycroft, I mean, is there a God? Do you know there's a God?
I do, yes.
Right, so you're certain?
I'm as certain as any atheist could be that there isn't. What I would say is that I think that the real way in which atheism, or some sorts of atheism in this country, are showing themselves to be somewhat intolerant at the moment, is in this idea that atheism, that having no belief in God, is a neutral position. that if you hold a secular view, then you're neutral, and that any public space should be completely free from anybody with any kind of religious attitude or belief. That somehow, if you're an atheist, that means that you've considered the facts completely and that you've discussed everything entirely rationally. But as a Christian or as a religious person, you've looked at the same world, you've looked at the same universe, you've looked at the same evidence, and somehow you're an idiot because you've come to a different conclusion.
Somehow you're an idiot. That's what would you like to say?
Well, I'm a Christian and I've got atheists around me and I've been called soft-headed, deluded and everything. I think what they think is that atheism is the truth and everything, and they don't really take into account that. They just seem to think it's like the opium of the people, you know.
Professor?
We're just really looking at the evidential question. Is there evidence for whatever it is you happen to believe? If I tell you, I don't know, eating strawberry yoghurt will make you disappear, you can check it out. You can give it to the producer so she vanishes.
It's a passive understanding.
If I ask you for evidence, or ask the people you've just spoken to for evidence, if somebody says, I know there's a God, my question is, it's not rude, it's not aggressive, it's simply, how do you know? On what evidence? Explain it. Let's discuss it. That's the atheist position. It's not aggressive, it's not pugnacious, it's pleasant.
Well, Richard Craig, you're co-director of Camp Quest UK. Do you know there's not a God?
I don't believe there's a God, no.
Are you sure?
Well, as sure as I can be without actually seeing any evidence.
Because certainty can be a dangerous thing. But you had this exercise that there are two imaginary unicorns, and people get a prize if they prove that one of the imaginary unicorns doesn't exist. Or they prove that and there's a book of myths as well. And did somebody win the prize?
Not this year. It's, the Unicorn Challenge is we tell the campers that there are two invisible unicorns around camp. They can't be seen, can't be heard, can't be felt, can't be touched. Leave no tracks. They can't hurt them, you can't hurt them. And obviously what we say is just try and prove that they don't exist. No one's won this year, but the philosophy behind it is to prove that you can't disprove a negative.
See, it boils everything down to the rational, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and a religious person is absolutely rational to believe in God. The question that you were asking is, prove it. No, that's faith. You don't have to prove your faith, you just have to have faith. But you can't disprove God. All you can say is there's a certain scientific logic that says evolution, and as a Muslim I've got no issues with that. Maybe somebody else will have. But you can't prove it either way.
But this isn't
that's
what
faith.
This whole discussion was supposed to be about tolerance. Is atheism intolerant? I happen not to believe in God, but I have no problem at all with people who do believe in God. That's their choice, it's their decision. But if we're talking about tolerance, as a lesbian, I would say that every instance of institutionalised homophobia I've ever come across has been in some form of religion.
Exactly right. For me, this isn't about what you believe or don't believe. It's about where your beliefs take you. So I happen to believe in God, despite all the evidence to the contrary. I did.
What evidence to the contrary?
Despite the absence of evidence to prove the existence of God, you can come at it from either angle without mentioning unicorns. The problem is where your beliefs take you. So yes, I'm sure it's very uncomfortable for people of faith to be described as bananas by atheists, but it's not as uncomfortable as being told you're going to hell if you don't happen to subscribe to a certain belief system, or eat certain foods, or conduct certain ceremonies on tiny baby boys, or wear things on your head, or all of these things. So it's where your belief takes you. So for an atheist, it's an antidote now to religious nonsense. Professor, it's not an antidote to faith.
Professor.
The question was about intolerance.
Yes.
And if you want to find examples of intolerance, you need to look no further than organised religion. Fatwas against a man who wrote a book that someone didn't approve of. The history of Northern Ireland.
But it's easy to point to those things, and it's easy to point to nutty 6,000-year creationism as a sort of example. But they're not, are they proper examples of religious belief?
It's not mainstream, so you won't find a mainstream Old Testament scholar in a university in the UK today who would say that the account in Genesis is supposed to be understood as a literal scientific account. It wasn't intended to be. But I think the point there is, of course, people, whether they have religious faith or not, they can be intolerant. The point is, though, that today there there are an increasing number of very vocal atheists, people like Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and a whole set of others
who are intolerant,
who are very intolerant and very vocally so.
And Chloe maybe as well.
Because the churches are so tolerant and so quiet.
They're intolerant. Look at what they're up against.
No, the evidence is mixed. So, for example, a Christian motivated by his faith sets up Barnardo's. He's driven by his faith, and it's understanding who he is to do that.
I do work for a charity which was based on Christian beliefs, but it annoys me when Christians somehow say that's the only reason we do these. That's actually, that's a rather bleak, immoral judgment.
We're just trying to get a balanced
What I find amusing here is the certainty. On one says absolutely unequivocally there's a God. Professor here says unequivocally there isn't.
I don't think
actually, I'm an agnostic.
I don't think it is unequivocally, actually, because Richard Dawkins himself has said he's as sure as he can be. He's not certain. Are you? He said it here on this show. Are you certain there's a God?
Yes.
Right. Richard Dawkins says he's only on a scale of 1 to 7. He's only 6 in his certainty that there isn't a God. Who's the zealot?
Well, no, because I don't force him to do anything, nor do I attack his belief system, and he does have a belief system. I don't say, hold on, Richard, guess what? If young children are sexualised, that's a social evil. He doesn't say anything about it. He talks about the burqa, he talks about the veil, he talks about how religious people dress. Yet, if a consumer society pushes a certain style, a certain orientation, a certain way of living...
Such as?
Well, such as sexualisation of children. He's got no issues with that. If a religious person says, hold on, I don't want my children dressed in a particular way...
Do you know he's got no issues with it?
Well, he's writing, read his books. I mean, he's said stuff about...
You can't cover everything. He's taken on the ontological question. You can't expect him to deal with Woolworth's toys.
No. We're not. Well, absolutely, we can do. We can say, why is a certain product of toys aimed at young girls so
I find it offensive that you think that's a preserve of religious people.
No,
absolutely ridiculous.
I'm just saying that he hasn't picked that up.
Okay.
What he does do is pick up when religious people say cover. And I think that's an issue. He has a faith belief.
But I think it's also another issue here that I do hear a lot from faith groups, is that somehow they are the only people, they have the monopoly on morality.
Absolutely.
They are the only ones who actually have the right to invade them.
Because the point is that hopefully most of us in this studio, we recognise that the truth is somewhere in the middle. There are claims and counterclaims. What we should all want is to have a reasonable debate about what account of the universe and human existence and future and identity is more plausible. I'm trying to offer one. I'm only pointing out to the fact that some public
You'd like more
atheists
respect from some atheists for what you believe?
Well, I think we all need respect for what each other believe.
Chloe?
Well, atheists want exactly what you've just described. We want a debate. Now, what exactly is intolerant or disrespectful about wanting to debate someone's views with them? Now, even if you use slightly strong language, even if you call people names, well, in the end, that's not the same as the words that get thrown at atheists like militant and extremist and fundamentalist.
Damned.
It's just... Sorry?
Damned.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're often words that are put to people who have religious faith as well. But the point is, if
we get told that we don't derive any morality from anywhere. I mean, just to come back to say the religious ethos of Barnardo. So I was reading your website with interest, and I looked at. I think it's 4 bullet points that cover the views that come from your religious ethos. None of them are actually related to the biblical teachings. They're all very good points.
And we don't say they are.
Yes.
We're very clear we don't say they are.
You say that. You say in the paragraph above that that the motivations for the organisation come from religious ethos.
No, we do not. We say our history was born in the Christian faith, and we now work with and employ people of all faiths and no faith at all.
I mean, that's different. I'm not saying you discriminate at all.
Away from that particular point, isn't it? Let's come back to you, because you're a Quaker, but you don't believe in God, right? You believe God's kind of within us, and it's not nothing to do with the label. It's how you live your life.
That's right. Quakers, kind of the guy regarded as the founder of Quakerism, George Fox. 2 very important things that he said for me was he encouraged people to walk cheerfully over the world, seeking that of God in everyone. So you could say that of good in everyone. So that's how my kind of version of God is perhaps that. But he also encouraged people to let your lives speak. And in York, Joseph Rowntree Foundation, we have examples of fantastic things that happen to come from Quakers.
You have gay marriage in York, didn't you?
That was debated in the big...
Quaker debate.
Yes, and a decision was made on that this week. Yeah. So what Quakers try to be is tolerant to all views and to encompass them.
What would you like to say? You've had your hand up for ages.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I think the this whole debate that we're having today shows what a brilliant invention that religion was. Absolute superb invention by mankind. Yes. You know, there's no it's total gross profit on everything. There's no outlay.
Profit, did you say? How do you spell that?
With an H. You know, you're just selling faith, and it's selling an idea.
Yeah.
And the shops are the churches, and you get the punters to build the churches.
Yeah. We're talking about intolerance, and we've had a few sort of input on that particular issue. It seems to me that the way in which this intolerance of atheism is outworking itself in our society is to say that in public institutions and in public places, religious people should basically be quiet, because their
and not
views
bring their
aren't
religion
rational.
into it. Yeah.
That atheism is the rational viewpoint. Therefore, in schools or in hospitals or in workplaces, only secular ideas are allowed. That religious people should be quiet in those places, and that's what I see as being intolerant. I'd love to just have a debate about in the public sphere with atheists or with people of other
what we've been doing for the last 20 minutes.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you will find that doesn't happen in schools very much anymore.
No, that's maybe a point.
I'd be delighted to accommodate you on the debate. I think that one of the issues is this issue about the public sphere is, of course, there are lots of different religions, and all demanding special treatment in the public sphere. They're all demanding particular status for example, schools, which of course a charitable status, shall we say, for a faith school, which of course means that we're supporting it. Hospital chaplains and so forth, which of course means that we're supporting it. Well, so it's a particular faith that is arguing in favour of special treatment, and that's the debate.
That was the debate. All three debates. Thank you all so much for taking part this morning. Join us next week from Peterborough. Have a good Sunday.